Hello, my name is Jeff, and this is the Lexus Land Cruiser Prado. Well, Lexus technically calls it the Lexus GX550, and maybe just simplifying and calling it a Land Cruiser is not giving the GX550 enough credit. While it's true that the GX550 is essentially the Lexusized version of the Toyota Land Cruiser that's on sale, they've changed quite a lot to make it the Lexus version. I mean, even the full-size Land Cruiser is sold as a Lexus. That's the LX600 here in the States. The GX550 starts at $64,000, and it does feature a rugged off-road trim that comes as the Overtrail package, but they also sell this, the luxury trim, which is more of a Land Rover Defender fighter, a stay-on-the-road SUV, and comes with things like these massive 22-inch wheels just to try and make it look a bit sharper. But it still features off-road chops deep down and shares a lot of similarities with the Land Cruiser, including that fourth-time four-wheel drive. But the biggest, most important change about the Lexus GX550 is what's under the hood. Under the hood, the GX550 is only offered with a single powertrain. It's a quiet and powerful twin-turbocharged 3.4-liter V6 rated for 349 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque, which is a pretty big step up over the Land Cruiser and, more importantly, makes more power than the V8 from the last generation GX. Now, this engine is then paired with a 10-speed automatic transmission and sends power to all four wheels via the standard full-time four-wheel drive with the option to shift it into 4-low as you need. Now, this vehicle is pretty hefty. It has a very solid frame shared with the Land Cruiser and the LX600 and weighs 5,500 pounds. But because of how robust it is, when you get the Overtrail trim, you get up to a 9,096-pound towing capacity, which is very impressive and just improves the overall usability of this vehicle. Performance-wise, you're looking at a 0 to 60 of around 6.2 seconds, a quarter mile in 14.7 seconds, with a limited top speed of 105 miles per hour. And as far as economy goes, because you're likely going to be daily driving this, you're looking at an EPA-rated 15 miles per gallon city, 21 miles per gallon highway, and 17 miles per gallon combined, which means you're looking at roughly 440 miles per tank. But of course, that fluctuates depending on how you drive it. This vehicle is not the most aerodynamically shaped, therefore you keep your foot on it. This powerful engine will happily drain that gas tank, but otherwise you can eke out a few more MPGs on those highway drives. Moving on, this is the key to the Lexus GX550, which is the standard Lexus key that's been around for a while now. Moving on to the vehicle itself, it's quite sharp. I like the way this looks. It's definitely different styling from that you'll find on the Land Cruiser, but the general size, shape, and form factor are the same. In fact, that's going to be the case for most Toyota Lexus vehicles. They all share that new next-generation Toyota architecture underneath, and so they'll all have the same wheelbase, and that even includes the larger full-size Land Cruiser, the LX600. There are some other updates that you can't really see. For example, the Lexus versions, the GX550 and even the LX600 get different drivetrain components that are stronger, different differentials that accompany that twin-turbo V6. So that's one of the bigger buying propositions between the Land Cruiser and the GX550. This particular GX550 is finished in Incognito, which is this gloss gray that every single manufacturer under the sun has done their best to replicate ever since Audi came out with Nardo Gray, or make their own version of, I should say. The other cool thing about the GX550 is how much the appearance can change depending on what trim you choose. Now, this one is obviously that luxury trim, as I mentioned earlier, so you get things like these massive 22-inch wheels, which are there to make it look more premium, right? More to compete with things like the Land Rover Defender or other luxury SUVs, even if they sacrifice a bit of ride quality in the process for those massive wheels. Generally, the GX550 will also feature fixed side steps. However, with the Luxury Plus package on this vehicle, we have power side steps. So those will open and retract as you use either the front doors or the rear doors on both sides. You also get the panoramic roof, which is not something I think everybody needs, but it's nice to have and can open the vehicle up if it feels a little bit crowded. Now, coming to the front of the vehicle, there are some pretty interesting styling changes. For the GX550, Lexus has gone away from their absolutely massive grille. You can see the basic shape is still there, very much reminiscent of Lexus, but I much prefer the way that this looks. Underneath, however, we still have a skid plate, so this vehicle is still fairly set for off-roading with that full-time four-wheel drive. As we come around to the side here, we have the triple LED headlights set up, so that's similar to the Land Cruiser. Fog lights, adaptive suspension underneath. As we come back, even the hood is very, very similar to that of the Land Cruiser. Of course, the windshield and cowl. We have these mirrors, which are the exact same, look like something off the FJ Cruiser. Power folding heated mirrors that'll automatically fold up when parked. Keyless entry on all 4 doors. That is a big deal to me. That makes the accessibility of this vehicle very, very good. You can just grab any door as long as the key's in your pocket. Moving on, you can see the windows are tinted in the back. As with other Lexus models, you could expect more sound deadening and things like that to make the vehicle quieter. And as we come around to the back, we have a little bit of a spoiler. And of course, we have a power hatch, which can be kick-opened to kick it open if you want. But more importantly, and this is shared with the Land Cruiser, touch this button and you can open up just the rear glass. The reason this is so cool is this is something that used to be more popular, like starting in the 80s and 90s, and you just don't see it anymore. And yet here it is on the GX550 and the Land Cruiser, which is very cool. You also have those power hatch options, as we mentioned earlier, where you can actually lift everything up. And that even has a kick sensor to make it that much easier if you're carrying groceries, which gives you access to the buttons in the back, your AC 120 volt plug, so you can even raise or lower the power third row seats in the back if you need them, although they're not the largest for adults. The other thing that's kind of annoying, and this is the same thing for the Land Cruiser, is this little plug back here, which it's not a good styling element. It's meant to hide the tow hitch, obviously. It just doesn't look good on any of the vehicles that it comes on. I almost wish they just kind of hid the tow hitch below the bumper or something. That would have looked significantly better. But all in all, this is a pretty sharp vehicle and a cool alternative. Moving on to the interior, if we open it up, our power step comes out, and we can see that the interior is very similar to that of the Land Cruiser, but of course it has been amplified to make it more of a Lexus. These seats, for example, still perforated, nice side bolstering. They are, of course, power adjustable with memory settings. The biggest difference, while they are heated and ventilated, you can get that on the Land Cruiser. What you can't get is that these are also massaging seats, which is a very cool luxury change, and that goes for both of the front seats, and you can, of course, option the rear with the heated seats. This particular interior happens to be finished in this two-tone, which has some very cool components. The other big change from the Lexus or the Land Cruiser is the fact that you can get the 1800 watt Mark Levinson sound system here in the GX550, a significant upgrade over the speakers inside of the Land Cruiser. Now, before we spend too much time going over the tech here, first we have to get into the back seat and see what's going on back here. Now, the cool part about this is you get multi-zone climate control. So back here you can see these are the heated seat and climate controls for the rear seat. They of course have their own vents, even their own lighting, very nice, and some more vents for technically what would be the third row in the back, but is currently folded down. As far as general headroom goes, I could sit back here for quite a long time and be quite comfortable. The seats are reasonably comfortable. You get a lot of luxuries, things like the actual sunshades that you can use and close up to feel nice and protected on the inside. Lots of headroom. I'm 6 foot even for reference, and you could fit people taller than me back here. And so it's pretty practical, not to mention the third row that you can either fold up or fold down, just like the second row. But let's move back into the front. So now we're back up front in the Land Cruiser, and as you can see, we're now seated in the driver's seat. And a lot of this is similar, but I do have to say one thing before we get too far. I'm about ready to put my fist through the dashboard of this vehicle, and this was the same experience with the Toyota Land Cruiser. The current safety system 3.0 Plus that is offered in Toyota and Lexus models has the most annoying beeps on the planet. I would probably not be surprised if you told me that most owners are disabling a lot of the driver assists and beeps that come up in these cars, because it even beeps at stuff that is irrelevant to the current driving action you're trying to do. And it's made me triple or quadruple check things that I've already double checked and don't need to check again and question some of my driving behavior. So if anything, I feel like it's making me a worse driver, and it's really just annoying me, especially this infrared sensor that's for the heads-up display. That is sort of a minor gripe since you can disable a lot of that. Now let's get into the cool tech features. This car has these 2 digital displays. You do get a heads-up display, which is wonderful to use, of course. You don't have to take your eyes off the road to check a lot of your information. The digital display in front of the driver can be adjusted depending on what you want it to display. So you can adjust all 3 of these separate sections sort of on an individual basis here. And as you can see here, you can kind of rotate through them. And if you hold OK, then you can even customize specifically what you want in each section. So see here, we could shift over and change the left side. So that's all very intuitive, makes it so you can set it up exactly exactly the way you want, and I think that's quite a good system. The steering wheel itself, lots of button integration. You actually have some floppy paddles here to do some manual shifting. Can't imagine a lot of people will want to use that. We do have a lot of our standard buttons for infotainment control, in addition to a lot of our driver assists and cruise control. Everything's pretty standard too. A lot of the buttons that you'd normally find on the left side of Toyotas are all here. You have some of your parking assists, your hatch opening, your vault control buttons to send power to that back section. And then on the right side here, we have our digital display. Push to start. This is, of course, that very infamous Toyota Lexus infotainment system, which is fantastic to use, fairly responsive. All of the buttons opt for more of a touchscreen approach here in this vehicle as opposed to the Land Cruiser, which still has a lot of physical buttons. And then you also get a lot of the off-road features, like you can see here, things that are all available quickly at a touch of a button. Check your tire pressures, your seat controls, even to get to the massage functionalities I mentioned earlier, as you can set up all that stuff here, including your separate zone climate control. So again, the driver passenger get their own, the second row gets their own controls. Moving down, this is a pretty significant change here as well. You can see the whole setup. Shifter is very similar with your manual drive modes and a physical select shifter, which I much prefer to any roto dials or kind of weird mouse select things. Over here, we have a lot of the drive mode selects, and this vehicle, being the luxury package, doesn't have the MTS off-road modes like you would get in the Overtrail or the updated Land Cruiser models. So instead, when we move this, we get more of the sort of standard drive modes, as you can see here. So you have the Eco mode, which is going to try to limit your inputs for improved fuel economy. Comfort's pretty self-explanatory. Normal mode, then Sport S and Sport S Plus. I can't imagine those will get used much here in this vehicle, but they're there nonetheless. You have traction control buttons, your tow haul modes. Here we have some cool ways to sort of hide some of your charging ports, but you also get regular USB Type-C ports. Some cup holders that don't adjust but can be hidden and used as a storage pocket if you don't need them. Our parking brake hold, and of course, some of our four-wheel drive and center locking connects. So full-time four-wheel drive, so this will stay in high 4 most of the time, but you have the option for low 4 and the option to lock the center diff. Wireless charger, and of course, because this is a luxury vehicle, you get a cool box, just like a lot of the competition. As we open it up top, of course, this is a great feature to have, the digital rear view mirror. It could still function like a regular mirror, but in my opinion, when you have a SUV, especially a 3-row SUV, and you put stuff for people in the back, this is a great way to see around that. You have all of your home controls, of course, for things like garages or gates, all of your lights up here, which can be nicely touched or turned on, very intuitive here, and even some of the various select switches here for our sunroof controls to open everything up, and our sun visor. So pretty standard here. Where the big difference is right now you cannot hear anything outside of this vehicle except for all of the AC and climate controls that are currently going on in it. And again, more sound deadening in this vehicle because it is a Lexus, and it's also going to be very, very hospitable because of that. So there you have it. The vehicle just beeped at me as I was turning left with the vehicle that happened to be next to me in the other turn left lane. Kind of annoying for the fist through the dash comments. Power, getting onto the freeway. Very smooth in the overall delivery of the vehicle. As I kind of mentioned earlier, it's not the fastest vehicle on the planet, but it's faster than a lot of SUVs, especially of this size. And you won't notice any issues while traversing the earth in your GX550. The other cool thing is we're now doing freeway speeds, and the vehicle got no louder on the interior. It is still incredibly quiet in here. The only things I actually hear are the climate control system blowing air into the interior of the vehicle. That is incredibly impressive. What they've built here with the GX550 is an off-road vehicle with full-time four-wheel drive, ground clearance, and a front bash plate, yet it doesn't make any compromises while driving on the road. You could comfortably daily drive this vehicle. Obviously, this one having the luxury package is more so suited to that goal as a luxury vehicle, but the bigger 22-inch wheels are a little bit weird as far as what they do for the vehicle and compromise a little bit of ride quality. But this thing's incredibly impressive. You know, it looks like a big vehicle on the exterior, but it doesn't drive like one. You'd be surprised just how nimble this thing feels. It's really easy to park, and when you're driving on like the freeway, for example, The big boxiness of it, while it's not great for fuel economy, the upright A-pillar makes it really, really easy to actually see out of both your windshield and your side windows. The massive side mirrors make it really easy to see down the side of the vehicle, though I would have loved to see some aided video cameras when you put on things like your turn signals, similar to what Hyundai Kia Genesis does. I think that's fantastic. But you do get the camera for the rear mirror here at the top, which is very nice to have, especially as I mentioned earlier, full of people or stuff, you can still see out the back. So that makes this just an incredibly approachable vehicle. The other thing is, where this has a significant improvement, is that 1800 watt sound system for that Mark Levinson system. That's a big upgrade. Love to have it in Lexuses, and this would be no exception. You get that sound system in here, and then you could just blast some tunes, and it's already super quiet. This vehicle is premium luxury with all of the off-road capabilities you could possibly ask for. The only way that you would want to change that is if you wanted a little bit more off-road capability, then you might look at the over-trail trims. But either way, anybody that drives one of these vehicles, I think, will be thoroughly impressed. And this makes such a cool value proposition and really a big alternative to things like the Land Rover Defender, because this is incredible. High up seating position, but no compromising features on the road. I mean, this is really good. So there you have it. That is a quick look at the Lexus GX550, the Lexus version of the Toyota Land Cruiser, which does, of course, feature a plethora of changes, most notably that twin turbocharged V6, which really ups the towing capabilities of this vehicle. But the GX550 is really special in the sense that it really takes that fight to the highly desirable luxury off-road segment. I mean, if you were considering looking at maybe a used G500, or maybe you're even looking at a Land Rover Defender, this does a good job of competing with those vehicles. If you have some extra money and really like the Land Cruiser, maybe you'd take a look at the GX550 as well. I mean, this doesn't cost a whole lot more than the Land Cruiser to start with, and it features those cool over-trail off-road trims, or the luxury trim like this one, for a more on-road experience, but are still very capable off-road vehicles with full-time four-wheel drive. So with that, that is the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and could leave me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. Let me know what you think about the GX550 using the comments down below. And of course, get subscribed so you don't miss future videos like this. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.